No edits.
No, but what do we need to edit for, bro?
I'm asking.
Come on.
I don't know who's your editor guy. I'm used to edits and action 1, 2, 3.
All right, cool. So listen, we're here now at Durley's with the community to have a conversation about how we look at ways to improve policing in the community. And I think, especially because we're from a black background, we kind of have a little bit of a different kind of conversation going on. So we've got Joseph here. Joseph, you want to introduce yourself?
What's going on? So Joseph Hilton. So I am the outreach recruitment lead for the Met in the South area, so covering Croydon, Bromley and Sutton. And just here today to have a conversation really, and talk to the community. This is the barbershop, so this is real talk. And that's what I'm here for today.
Real talk, I like that. Real talk.
We also got...
Yeah, sorry, my name's Danny. I volunteer with Project for Youth Empowerment every Saturday. I'm here, want to get involved in the conversation, open dialogue. I think it's an important topic in regards to the police in the community, especially the relationship with the black community. Looking forward to having a discussion.
And then obviously we're going to have loads of people coming in, but right next to me I've got...
So yes, Marlon, been a part of the community for quite a while. It should be a good discussion regarding what we can do to kind of bridge the gap between the young people and the Metropolitan Police and so forth. So yeah, it's going to be a good discussion. So yeah, Marlon.
So I guess just to kick the conversation off, a good place to start would be, where do we see the community and the police currently, before we start talking about tangible solutions and how we move forward. So I don't know who wants to take the first reins, Danny, Marlon.
So for me, I feel like the relationship for me, I feel as if it's not very good. I mean, we can see in the media, we can see what's happening lately, that the relationship with the police and the local community, especially the black community, there's a massive gap in terms of knowledge, in terms of how the police, I personally think, see us, see our community, as well as what the youth of the today see the police, to see what their role is in the community and what they can do to affect change. So I feel like there's a massive gap. I feel like there's a massive way where we can kind of bridge that gap and learning curves for everyone to kind of get together and have their say. I feel as if what really needs to happen is, I think it's a hard one. I think that there's layers to it. There's layers to it. I feel as if myself, as a young black boy in the community, that's grown up in the community for quite a while, the job that I do, I'm involved with the police a lot more than what I did growing up. I know my interactions with the police growing up were mostly negative. The field I work in now, I'm liaising with police every other day because I contribute in housing young people, especially young black boys in housing, and a lot of the times there's situations where the police are called, and I have to somewhat be the advocate for them, or be the person to kind of have that conversation and articulate myself so they can get what they need to get off their chest in a manner where it doesn't incriminate them or criminalize them. So I definitely see both sides of it. I do think that it's hard. It is hard. I know there's a lot of mistrust. There's a lot of
mistrust, but it's warranted. I think through the community, especially growing up.
Yeah.
I think for me, as a grown man now, I don't really have too much negative connotations thinking about the services of the police. However, if I look at the youth, especially like my son's age, what's portrayed, what they see. Listening to, I suppose, our experiences growing up, their thoughts are not that positive. However, it's like any organisation. I think we have to kind of create change internally. Probably more people from the community will have to get involved in that organisation, to try and sort of change, you know, because, you know, when you think about the police as an institution, we know it's institutionally racist.
Yeah.
So it's breaking down those barriers, but I think the more people that try and work within that organisation, that's how we can kind of bring change. That's my thought process on it.
Yeah.
I mean, so I would say like it's funny you say, you know, your attitude or your perception changed as you're growing older. What was the, like, I know you're growing and all that kind of stuff. What was the kind of switch for you? You know, obviously you're younger, you thought one way, and then obviously you're older now.
Yeah.
And what made you say,
just maturing as a human being. But then also, you know, I grew up in Clapham when I was younger. So you know, there was lots of I suppose there was gang mentality. So you would see it. I think growing up, you know, I wasn't really involved in gang activity, but I was around it to a certain degree. Yeah. And the thing is, you know, you're kind of all tarred, isn't it? You know, we all have a kind of, we dress a certain way. Now there's lots of kids who like to dress like nowadays, hoodies and whatnot, who are not associated with gang culture, but everyone's kind of tarred with the same brush. Yeah. You know, so you know, I could have been sent to the shop, you know, by my mum. Yeah. You get pulled over, you get stopped, you get searched. So that kind of harassment. Yeah. You know. So that in that sense, interaction with the Met, you know, leaves a negative connotation. However, as you grow, it's a services which is needed.
Yes.
Like, things happen, you know, negative things happen, robberies. You know, you're gonna call the police for help. You know? I
think for me, I think that's you hit the nail on the head in terms of what you said. As you grow, you kind of understand what the police services are actually there for. So for me, growing up, it was a lot of ignorance for myself growing up. Yeah. And like I said, it was almost a thing of this is my background, this is where I'm from, this is my demographic, and the police are out to get us.
Yeah, but
that is what we was.
But you know what?
That is what it was.
In certain regards, I mean, obviously, you know, you're someone who works, so your experience is going to be different. But you must, even as a person of colour within that organisation, you must still see certain things from your colleagues where you might question, think,
100%.
So growing up, we will kind of have that.
Yes.
But
it's warranted.
Against us.
It's warranted.
Because
it's
of
warranted.
the experience that we come across.
Oh, it's warranted. I mean, even till today. It's quite funny because even today, my Monday to Friday, I'm quite smartly dressed, and when I do have interactions with the police or when I do see them, it's a smile and it's on your way. On the weekends when I'm dressed in my casual clothes, I do get a different look, and there's times when I do get pulled over, and I find it quite funny because the moment I open my mouth and articulate myself in a certain way, they understand that this is not as you said earlier, this is not the painting of the brush of all black people. Yeah. So I feel as if you're 100% correct, and I think there's a massive gap between what we expect as a services from them and what they feel like they have to give.
Yeah. I think also for young people now, they look at it like, I don't know, like it's not really an aspiration for a job role, is it? You know, if you say, what do you want to do? You know, what do you want to be when you grow up? You don't hear, you know, police officer. You might hear like a fireman, you know, doctor, ambulance, outside of like sports and entertainment. But when it comes to like a public service, like a police officer, which is needed, it's not really an aspiration that our young culture, you know.
And this is, I guess, this is what we're trying to change, and we're trying to get people to look at it like as a career that you can aspire to be, you know, and you can do different things in it. It's not just the Bobby on the beat, or it's not just like, you know, it's institutionalized place. Yeah. It in some aspects it's been like that, and it has been a place where, you know, they swept a lot of the negativity under the carpet and carried on like it didn't happen, you know. But now we're at a place where everything's in the open, and it's about time.
Social media's put a microscope on everything now.
Absolutely. So we need to come correct right now.
Yeah.
Can I ask you both a question? Because in terms of ages, I would say I'm considerably a lot younger than you guys. So in your eyes, how have you seen the change from you growing up to how the police are now? Because like I said, it would be good to kind of hear from what you lot see, because what I get to hear and what I tend to hear quite a lot from my elders is back in our day it was a lot worse. The youth now, they're not strong enough, they're not hard enough, they need to just fix up and just move on.
There's not enough police presence, I think,
Yeah.
personally.
Yeah.
You don't really see the traditional Bobby on the beat.
Yeah.
You do see police obviously driving in their squad
Patrolling,
cars,
yeah.
patrolling, but as I see a physical presence, you don't really see that. Things that have changed personally for me, I just see for myself as I've grown older, so my thought process has changed. But in terms of
policing.
the policing,
Yeah.
I don't know if it's changed. I mean, look, everything got brought to the forefront with the I suppose Stephen Lawrence inquiry.
Yes.
Where we all knew growing up culturally that there was racism.
Oh,
But then-
100%,
But then
yeah.
it came into the
The
mainstream.
mainstream media, addressed it.
I don't know. Has anything really changed? I mean, I suppose you would be able to solidify if that's the case because you're working inside internally, right? So you would be able to know in terms of like, recruitment, in terms of like teaching, I suppose, police officers about the different cultures that they're going to interact with. Nowadays, it's more diverse in this country now, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not just black people, it's people from all over the world coming in, So I suppose police officers, they have to learn how to integrate, how to interact. So I suppose you probably would be the best person to say how it's changed from your experience growing up to now.
I mean, I'm by no means am I gonna kind of be like it's perfect. It isn't. There's a long way to go for the Metropolitan Police. But what I have seen is some starts in them making some changes, but for me there's a long way to go. There are a lot of good police officers, people who work within an organization, but I don't think their stuff gets overshadowed by the negativity that happens, and it seems to be week in, week out.
Yeah.
And that sometimes makes you feel like you're putting one step forward and one step back. So one step forward, two steps back.
Yeah.
And that can be very frustrating for individuals like myself and some of the other teams in the departments who are making strides in kind of helping and trying to increase the trust and confidence and building relationships with the communities. Because then not only is it rough on us, but it's rough on the communities because they're putting their legacy and their reputation on the line by being aligned with us. So when people see them with us and we've done something wrong, something's in the news, they're tarring us with the whole same brush. So it's tough on them and it's tough on us. So it's a difficult structure. It's a difficult thing to measure because it's almost like not everyone has the same mentality as certain departments. So it can be hard, and it's such a matrixed organization as well that I think it's going to take a long time for the whole thing to be changed. But there is some good work going on, but it is let down by some individuals.
And plus, I think media and films and music and all this kind of stuff. I remember growing up when I was young. I grew up in Clapham, but I grew up on a little estate. There always used to be like a community police officer. He used to come round. When we was young, they'd have a conversation. As you grow, it doesn't really happen anymore. Like now, you don't really have that. I feel you don't really have like the community police officer going into schools, like primary schools. It's coming to primary schools. I remember even in my secondary school, police officers would come in, kind of introduce themselves, talk about the role, how their presence is warranted in the wider community, etc., etc. And I don't know if that's something which is carried out today, but I feel like, especially with our young people, people who are, I suppose, not involved in kind of the street life, normal teenagers, they probably won't have too much of a negative connotation with police, depending on their experience.
Right.
Yeah.
The ones that I think the thought process that we have to change is street culture.
Definitely.
It's street culture that needs that has that kind of negative connotation, the distrust. Kids talking to it, like if you was to walk in a uniform and you used to see a school kid out there and you used to say, "How you doing?" If I'm talking to you, it's seen as, why are you talking to this?
Right.
So it's
That
the
needs to
mentality
change.
that needs to be changed from the youth as well as inside from the institution.
Do you think, because I know growing up for me, I think the biggest thing that me and my friends used to always say is we don't feel like the police take enough accountability. when something's gone wrong. We feel as if even in media, it's kind of shifted, and when asked directly,
Yeah.
how do you explain this? There's a lot of wish-wash left to right of what the actual issue is, and now we, as young black boys and a community, we see a lot of things before it's even, how do I phrase this? We see what it is for what it is.
Yeah.
We see it is for what it is.
Yeah.
That's what we do.
You see
And
the realness.
We see the realness
rather than it being sort of wishy-washy for the
right.
media.
And I feel as if I think what will help to bridge that gap is first and foremost is the police being able to take accountability when something's gone wrong and say, layman's terms, we've messed up. We're gonna make sure this doesn't happen again. We're gonna put the resources there to not to happen again. Is instead we're met with, we're gonna do our investigations, and then when the investigations come out, we'll let you know. And we've seen a statement put out on social media of what for me that's not
It's
good
true,
enough.
you know, it's
It's
taking
not good enough.
ownership, isn't it? When something
Because they expect us as a community to take accountability for things that are done in the community. I mean, I remember the riots. The riots was a big thing in Croydon when Reeves Corner got burnt down, and the media was I think was bashing and was really going down on the youth and what happened. Now, don't get me wrong, what they done wasn't the right way to express what they wanted
a
to
reaction
express,
though, isn't it?
But at the same time, they missed the whole reason why that riots even happened, and it was more pinpointed on Reeves Corner got burnt down and shops got looted and how much money that was lost.
Yeah.
For me, that shouldn't have been the agenda that was being pushed. And the reason why I think they done that because they wanted to shift away from what really happened to that young man.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I personally think. I feel is if they can take more accountability in the media, in mainstream media, for what they've done wrong, then I think that starts the steps to where we can kind of say, okay, the trust is not gonna be there, but it's starting to make
It's like
strides.
building bridges, isn't
For
it?
sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So my question is then, so we live in this unjust world and nothing is fair, right?
Yeah.
And you know, the police as an institution, it's not perfect. There are a lot of issues. You know, whether it's hospitals and nursing, education, there's all these problems. Imagine we don't get the apology or the you know, when you kind of like hold yourself to account that we won.
Yeah.
How do we move forward despite of that? Because they ain't going anywhere.
I feel as we're doing it now anyway. We're doing it now.
But as a majority, though.
But I think the majority now is doing it anyway. So what you was alluding to in terms of if that doesn't come, how do we as a community move forward? As a community, we are trying to do that now anyway because we haven't had an apology in public.
No, I think they've apologised, but it's whether or not the apology is just lip service.
But again, that's what I'm saying. In terms of the apology,
what I mean?
what is it? Is it a statement that's put out, or is it someone of a certain stature in the actual metropolis saying, "Come on, this is what we've done. This is what we're doing to rectify this."
Yeah.
We don't get that.
I think it's changing also the connotation of what it is to work within the police organisation for our culture.
Yes.
So if we can change that negative view, you know, and we have to, you know, I suppose you have to get, you know, people from the culture within the organisation to try and break down barriers from within change. Because I think if we just leave it to, you know, the Met as a force outside our community, nothing really is gonna change it. You know, it might just be some tick boxes exercises. And us as I suppose adults, we need to change our own sort of mindset.
Yeah.
About the police, because you know, but you only go on your experience.
Of course.
Do you know what I mean?
Can I take the conversation back just a couple of steps?
When I take the conversation back a couple steps, Marlon mentioned something about accountability, and I think that's a really pertinent point for us to touch on. And I guess, Joseph, from your perspective, and I know, don't get me wrong, I know you work for the institution, and I'm not expecting any extreme views, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, I guess, even down to this week, it was mentioned about Stephen Lawrence and the fact that the officers that were seen to be as complicit are not going to be investigated because kind of, you know, time has passed. I think the person in question, suspect 6, has passed away as well. So I think that kind of adds credence to that point in terms of not investigating. But I guess as a community, I listened to something earlier on the radio about us feeling over-policed but under-protected.
Yeah,
and I think that was
that's
a
true.
really important point. And I think going back to what Marlon was saying, pretty much that's how the young people feel. I guess that's how we felt at parts of our lives, even if we don't feel it now. We've definitely experienced it at some points. And just touching on what you said, Danny, about, you know, change coming from within. And I'm a strong believer in that. Don't get me wrong, I'm a strong believer in that. And I guess this is why this conversation is taking place, because we're now talking about how do we affect change.
Yeah.
But what does that change actually look like? Because if it's a young person, your son, your daughter, who says, now, do you know what, I want to become a police officer, given your experiences, how does that look? But I want to start with you, Joseph, and just go back to that accountability point. And I guess the Casey report was massive.
Right.
And since then, we're seeing a number of things come out about the Met, how they've handled situations. We've had the person at the top of the IOPC under question for like sexual exploitation with young people. And I guess it's about trust, right? We don't trust the police, so probably a big question for you. But how do we start to be able to trust the police?
That's a good question. For me, I think there's two ways you can answer it. You know, I think with the Casey report, that kind of highlighted, you know, some of the things that we need to make right, you know. But then we had the Stephen Lawrence report, which is what McPherson report, which was 99. So you can say what's changed. And for me, I think in terms of that, you're seeing a lot of things coming out at the moment. That means that could look at as that we're trying to get things out. We're not trying to sweep things under the carpet anymore. We're getting things out in the open. So it can be worse before it gets better. At the same time, my thing would be, there's a school of thought that says, why should the community be pressed to help the police do their own job, which is to police and sort out their own problems? So, you know, the community could look back and say to us, we're not going to sort out your issue. You should be able to police us properly. We shouldn't have to tell you what's wrong from what's right. You should know that already. So there's two ways you can look at it. For me, I think it's disappointing for a person who's in the Met at the moment. It's continually disappointing for me to hear some of these things that come out. But the way I try and rationalize it is I'm trying to do what I can where I am to kind of make a difference and trying to improve the lives and build those relationships with the people within my community and where I reside. So it is difficult and it's disappointing, but like I said, it's going to get worse before it gets better. And the things that are coming out now, you're going to see more of them because they're not being swept under the carpet anymore. No. They're being pushed to the forefront.
I think also things that happen in other countries have an effect on the mentality of the police in this country. You know, like what happened with George Floyd when he was killed by the police, and it was like there was lots of protesting here in England. So because we live in I suppose a social media world, when we see injustices over there or wherever in the world when it comes to police figures, or you know, it definitely does leave you with a little bit of a negative connotation of the police in this country, because similar things have happened. You know, there's been misjustice. People died in police custody, and there's been no resolution.
Yeah,
and no accountability. No accountability, I guess. And I guess going back to what you said, Joseph, I guess you do raise a good point when you say it's going to get worse before it gets better, because that's a narrative that's been spun by the police. But I guess more importantly, there's a little bit of a layer that's being missed here, and what I mean by that is that if we don't really have the hard-hitting conversation, then we're not having a conversation, if that makes sense. And I guess what I mean by that is, yes, the police have taken certain responsibilities, but like amongst your colleagues, etc., do you have these conversations? Once these reports come out, is it a point where you say with your peers, you know what, we need to sit down and talk about how we make improvements?
I mean, personally, absolutely. You know, this is something that affects me personally, as well as the team that I'm a part of, the outreach team. This is something that we discuss, you know, even though, you know, we work for the organization, as a human being, I have an opinion, you know, and as a man, I have an opinion. As a black man, I have an opinion. So these things affect me as if they would affect anyone else as well within the community. So yeah, you know, even though, you know, I work for the organization, it doesn't mean I always agree with, you know, everything that happens. And I'll be the first to put my hand up and you know, query, you know, the decisions that are made and how that affects what we do as an organization.
Can I just touch in on something? It might be a bit left field, but this is something that I've tried to get my head around multiple times, and for the life of me, I can't. Now, I don't want to sound insensitive at all, but in the last year, we've had. Okay, so let me get it out right. So in the last year, we've had a young man that was shot to death by a police officer in his car, if I'm correct, yeah. And we've had a police officer shot to death in custody. So now this is how this is my first thoughts was. Unfortunately, the police officer was shot to death in custody in the Croydon area. That person that the police officer got shot to death by was searched on the same night and found bullets on him, or shells. I don't know if I'm correct. Yeah, bullets or shells on him. He was searched and he found bullets on him. He wasn't strip searched there and then. He got taken to custody, and that's when this young man could sadly take this police officer's life. How does it get to the point where a young man could be in his car and get gunned down for, we don't know anything at the moment. Well, there's no reports to say that he done anything wrong. But then you've got a white person that can be searched, found bullets on them, not searched appropriately, and then being able to take a police officer's life. Now, how do I have that conversation with my cousins and my peers to say that's justice? Because, again, a young black boy's life's been taken for nothing, and there's no reports to say that he did anything, but then a young white man was able to have bullets on him, not be strip searched, been taken to custody, pull out his gun, and then shoot the officer. And I think that's a polar opposite. For me, that's like two completely contrasting things where that's completely been missed. And that's still happened in the last year. So my question to you, as obviously working in an organization, can you get your head around something like that? And how would that explain? How would you explain that those two incidences? And again, I think that's why there's no trust with police officers, because as young black boys, we get strip searched for nothing. And then you get a young white boy that gets searched, found bullets on him, wasn't searched appropriately, and then being able to go into custody with a firearm and kill a police officer. Sorry, that might be a bit left of the conversation that we was going to.
I mean,
but
it's real.
That's what we have to face in terms of what's happening. And then again, there's no explanation on either side how that is, what the outcomes are.
There's a lot of disparity, and you know, things. For me, there's a lot of questions that need to be answered by the organisation, and I think we definitely need to be better at kind of getting that information out in a timely fashion. Where it's not, things can't be misconstrued, because then you do have questions like you do. But yeah, there's a lot of work to do. There's a lot of work to do on our part, and you know, there is a lot of disparity at the moment, for sure.
Can I read something? Sorry to come on the mic. So one of the things, because we have these conversations in the barbershop when you're not here, Joseph, yeah? And one of the things that kind of comes up that I've heard is, in terms of accountability, people feel like they can't talk to the people that actually make the decisions. They feel like they can't talk to the people that really should be answering the questions. So for me, this is about moving forward, and do you feel like now there's more accessibility to senior police officers? Do you feel like if there is an issue that people like Danny, people like Marlon will be able to kind of go to police?
The decision makers.
And actually speak
affect
to
change.
them and have conversations.
Yeah, affect change for sure,
That's a question that I've got.
I do. I mean, even in Croydon itself, with the emergence of the CVA centre meetings and having the community come down on a Friday morning with a number of the senior police officers there integrating with the community is a great way for the community to kind of give their opinion and talk to the people in charge, you know, the superintendents, chief superintendents, to kind of get their message across. And I mean, that wasn't there a couple of years ago, but I think what you've seen something grow, you know, between the community and the police within Croydon in the last couple of years, which has kind of given that platform and made it more easier, in my opinion, to kind of get your voice heard.
Again, it's just I just think for me, what is good is that we're having these conversations, and we're having these conversations, and we can kind of address it in a manner where it's being articulated, where we can all be open and understand that there's and it's good to hear from yourself that you see there's a disparity, you see there's no cohesion, you see there's a massive disconnect, and you're open to say that. I think again, this conversation that we're having now, you even being able to say that as part of the Met is a massive, that speaks volumes, because we don't hear that. I'll be honest with you, I've never heard that before. And again, like I said, my job, I work for an organisation that I'm constantly, every other day, involved with the police in some sort of dialogue, or I'm going to courts to support young people in getting their voices heard. So it's nice and it's refreshing to hear that you understand and you can see that there's a disparity, there's a disconnect, and there's things that are put in place now that wasn't put in place before, that can kind of open the doors to have these discussions and have, again, affect change. So it's just refreshing to hear that.
Oh, was you going to say something?
I think, Joseph, one of the things since doing the work that we're doing that a lot of people question when they see gentlemen and ladies like yourself representing an organisation is what actually encouraged you to go and be part of such an organisation. Like, what change did you think that you could make by being in such an organisation? And I suppose one of the things that a lot of people ask is, do you get a lot of backlash from family members? Do you get a lot of backlash from community members that know that that's your role? Because one of the things that has been discussed as well is a lot of police officers have their role but don't actually disclose their role when they're in a certain space or when they're amongst certain people. So for you, going into the police force, I suppose it was what you wanted to see as change, what your motive was to join the police, and how you feel that you can affect change.
Yeah, thank you. So for me, the reason why I joined, because I was really interested in this project about diversifying the police and getting more people that look like myself into the police, into different roles, whether it's frontline, whether it was police staff like myself, or different. There's over 300 jobs in the police, and people don't know that. You know, cybersecurity, all sorts of things that you can do. So that was the kind of thing for myself. But it's hard. You walk a line as a black man from Caribbean descent. You walk a line where there's a lot of like people don't like that I work for the police. People are. It's difficult to kind of mention that sometimes. You know, if someone asks me, I'll tell them. But at the same time, there's the community and the police have sometimes had a bit of a rocky relationship. So it's not always going to be the first thing that you say. But if someone asks me, I would tell them. But I think it's hard anyway. Listen, running a business, we're in a barbershop right now. Running a business is hard. And, you know, I think as a community, sometimes we need to support, because at the end of the day, people in my position, we are people, we are human beings. We have life outside what we do, our jobs. And sometimes there can be a lot of scrutiny from our own kind. You know,
Distrust. If you say you work for the police, it's like...
Absolutely, there can be a lot of scrutiny from our own kind. And if you know it's hard for you, imagine how hard it is for someone that looks like you in that organisation, or how hard it could be for them. So I think sometimes as humanity, as people, we need to think about the struggles that people may or may not be going through.
Yeah.
Just as if you're running a business, it's tough. You get ups and downs, low seasons, high seasons. But then I think people don't understand what the police actually do. I think it's a tough job because you're scrutinized to the 100th degree, and then at the same time, you're like a pilot. You can't make mistakes. You can't not land. You know what I mean? And you're going to be in a position where everything is sometimes taken out of context. You're scrutinized, and the community will hold you to account as well. So it is a tough job, for the officers out there doing their role. But I think as a community, I think sometimes we could be more supportive of the officers who have said, you know what, I'm going to make a change in my community.
Yeah.
The officers who kind of said, okay, they said, you know what, despite everything, this is a job, but I'm going to try and improve my community for the better.
You probably
That's
feel
a
that
big stand.
you have to be on the defence a lot of the times as well, isn't it?
You can be like that. You can be like that. But you definitely develop thick skin.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you go into a situation and it can be tense until people kind of understand, and you kind of, wherever you are, you kind of build some rapport.
Yeah, of course.
But at the same time, I think we need to be more supportive if we can, understanding the circumstances that people are in.
So I guess that's a question back to people in the community then about, from me, I guess, what can the community do as well? Because as much as, I'll be honest in it, as much as there needs to be accountability for the police, I do feel like there is some accountability to be had by the community as well.
Yeah.
If we're being real.
Yeah.
If we're being 100, I think that's needed as well.
Okay, I'm jumping in now. Good evening. My name's Des. I'm a barber at the shop we're talking from today. Been here for 26 years, and I would like to say thank you for coming in today. Appreciate you coming in and answering all the questions and giving us your time. So where I'm gonna kind of jump in at is not far from where you're talking about now, the angle that you're coming from. Me and Wayne have been talking about these issues and building bridges for probably just over a month now. And he's been saying to me, we're going to do a podcast, do I think it's a good idea? And, could we get everyone involved and make it as natural as possible? So I was thinking about a lot of topics which I could bring up. And the one that came to me the best was that we have over the years we have a lot of men and some women that have got loads of what's the word I want to use? Loads of high-end jobs, and with that we've got doctors that come in. Obviously, everyone needs a haircut. Yeah, so we've got doctors that come in there, pilots, nurses, even policemen. So where I'm going with this is that I say in the last 5 years we've had 3 policemen that come in there on a regular basis, and I'm going to tell you their ages. Roughly, the eldest is roughly about 40. Then the second eldest is in his mid 30s, and the youngest is in his late 20s. Now I'm going to talk about scenarios, and I'm going to put the question to you to see if you can put any light on my scenario that I've got. Yeah. So I'll start with the eldest. The eldest came to me one day during lockdown. I was doing night work at Sainsbury's because obviously the barbershops were shut. And he said to me that he's looking to jump into the police force. Do I think it's a good idea? And he's got a brother that is a bit of a roadman, so there's a little bit of conflict going on there. I said, listen, at the end of the day, go for what you want to go for. Your brother's life is not your life. So said, so done. He joined the police force. When the shop opened back in March, he said, Des, I've started, but I'm moving away. So we no longer see him anymore. The second policeman, we knew he was a policeman, but it was something that he never spoke about. Lovely guy. It was nothing that he never spoke about. He's got 2 other brothers and his dad come in there. So it's a family that come in here. And the reason why we knew, and he knew that we knew that he was a policeman, is because there was an incident outside this barbershop one day, and he's obviously been called. And the incident was quite big. He dealt with this incident, and he hasn't been back since. Now, this is someone who's been coming here since he's 12. So he's been coming here for about 20 years. And he stopped coming when, we saw that he was a policeman. But we already knew. But it was something that we didn't discuss because he didn't seem like he was comfortable discussing his private life or his occupation. The third youngest, he still comes here. And the reason that I found out that he was a policeman was that I think maybe on a break time he had one day, they must have been at a McDonald's in Wandsworth, and the world is a small place. He was spotted by another customer that come in here. And he came back and he said, Des, the young guy that you trim, and he explained his haircut.
Right.
And he says, did you know that he's a policeman and he's a gun police as well? And I said, nah. So he said, I said, okay, cool, he's a cool guy. Everyone's got to work, everyone's got to pay the bills.
Yeah.
So the next time I saw him, took him outside, and I said, can't say his name. I took him outside and I said, I didn't know that was your profession. Are you comfortable talking about it? He said, yeah, I'm comfortable talking about it, but it's not something that I stand at the top of the trees talking about. So I said, I'm not going to discuss it or tell anybody if you don't want, because at the end of the day, I respect you enough not to talk about your occupation if you don't want to talk about it. So he still trims there. He's a very humble young man. For me personally, our relationship that we had, it's become a little bit more reserved now, but he's still a lovely guy. Why?
Why is it more reserved?
I don't know the answer to that. Maybe it's changed since we've had that conversation of him being a policeman, or me knowing that he's a policeman. So what I'm asking you is, why do you think most policemen are not comfortable talking about their occupation? Is it because, I don't want to jump the gun, is it because they're uncomfortable and people change towards them? Because that's what the young man did explain to me when I took him outside. He said, Des, I just want to come and get my hair cut. I want everybody to be comfortable. I want everybody to run jokes same way and be normal. So that's why I haven't told anybody else that didn't need to know. Because I value his money that he gives me, pays my bills, and I value his privacy. But what I found with the policemen that I've known and still currently know, there is something that they don't like to talk about. But just before I give it over to you, I think that it would help bridge a gap if those things were promoted and put out there in the right way. I think there can be a positive from that being put out there in the correct way. Because a lot of these young men, they haven't had that put out to them in the correct way from someone from their community, someone, real, that's probably been through some troubles, if it's not financial or living on an estate. I think these things, you got a policeman that's lived on an estate, he was in trouble when he was younger, he's coming from a one-parent family, he's had those struggles, but yet he's turned into a policeman, and, I'm coming from where you're coming from, and look at me today. I haven't seen any policemen bring themselves across like that to the young black community, to the young community at all. So why do you think that is?
That's interesting. I I think just from a personal standpoint, I do know there are certain departments that they have to have a certain amount of they can't disclose certain things. There's a certain amount of like secrecy, not secrecy, but you have to kind of move differently. Yeah, confidentiality, definitely. With how you go about what you do outside of work. So I know there are certain departments that have to do that. You know, detectives or special task force that you need to be able to be not anonymous, but you don't draw unnecessary attention to yourself. So there's that aspect. I think there's another aspect that some people think when you disclose certain things, there's a kind of scrutiny that comes with it as well. Just from osmosis, there's something that happens sometimes, and it can be a change. You know, someone came in here and said there was a millionaire. Maybe the conversation might be a bit different. You know, people might charge a bit. You know what I mean? Sometimes. So sometimes I think there's
more money.
yeah. Might go up. Not obviously, not here, but obviously, I'm just trying to say.
Yeah.
Sometimes some people treat you different based on, and some people just like the anonymity of coming in and being able to blend in and not having to do work. You know, I think that's a big thing as well. You know, because at the barbershop, you can have a conversation about anything. That's what it's about. You know, the realness. And sometimes, if you disclose that I'm a policeman, people might don't know.
I just think it's because we have a negative connotation of it.
A conversation.
Is that something? Is that fact, or is that something?
That's my opinion. That's my opinion.
Have you come across something like that?
The only thing I've come across is there are certain individuals that I know who, because of their work, I know they can't be on camera. So even in the work that I do, and we do a lot of things with the community, they will say, like, I can't be on camera just because of what I do. You know, detectives and things like that. So there are some cases where I understand it. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Where they can say, okay, we can do a podcast, but I can't do it on camera.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So there are some cases where that is the case.
Yeah.
But from a personal, this is just my personal thing. There is that, but then there is the thing where people don't want to disclose it because, you know, people can change around them, and sometimes there's such a niceness in just having to just be you and not having to you know, having a real conversation without saying those kind of things as well. So I think it's a two-pronged approach.
I think also it's the relationship between the community and the police. Because if someone comes in and says he's a doctor, I'm a doctor, you're going to be proud, isn't it? I'm a doctor, and the response that you're going to get from most people, probably pre-COVID, is, well done. You know, we need people like you. Do you know what I mean? I think once you disclose that you're a police officer within a black community like this, then it's all of a sudden like, why are you working for them and they're against us? I think, you know.
But for me though, why have we got such a a different approach? Because we all watch DCI John Luther. You know, we watch that. We tune in for that.
Yeah.
You know, when it's if it's Will Smith and Martin Lawrence's Bad Boys, we'll watch that. You know, there's a different perception. Obviously, we know why, but I don't know what it is sometimes as well. It's different when it's in your face and it's close to home.
It's authority. Sorry,
No, go on.
it's authority, isn't it? It's like, you know,
Yes.
When you are a policeman, you are in a position of great power and authority.
Yeah.
And that has to be channeled in the right way. Like, I'm 45, and there are a couple old school policemen that I knew that they wear their policeman badge proud. Like, they're talking to the roadman them, they're talking to the youths them, they're not hiding nothing. And at the end of the day, I'd say he was policeman for about 15 years from what I can remember, and he was well respected. He wore it proud, and I'm sure that there was some young youths looking at him thinking, I want to be like that, because he's the policeman that he's with, white, black, Asian, they was respecting him. When he came to barbershops, Brixton, wherever he was respected. acted. Like, he wasn't hiding who he was at all, and he could mix and blend it with the young, the old, you know, as I said, the roadman, them, the people in the food shops. He mixed it up, you know, with all nations.
But there's less community, but there's less community police about though, isn't there as well?
Yeah, but yeah, there is less police. But I'm saying this policeman that I remember, he put himself about.
Yeah.
He put himself about, and what was good with him is that obviously every couple of weeks he'd be with different officers, different colours, and he's bringing them round the man them. He's bringing them round the man them. I don't see policemen like that no more.
Do you know what would be interesting?
I don't see policemen like that no more.
To grab a teenager off the road and just ask someone unprepared, what's your thoughts of police, and see what they would say, because we're all grown adults, experienced. You know, we can have different opinions, but to grab a kid off the road and say, what do you think about the police? Then you'll find where your source is.
I'll tell you what, continue the conversation and we'll try to do that.
I need to go. Yeah, I got like 10, 15 minutes in it. But yeah.
So that would be that. I think doing something like that would give you a real eye opener or insight, because we, as I say, we're of a certain age. You know, we can think about our experiences. You know, some of it may be negative when we're growing up, but then as we get older, we can temper, you know, what we want to say and think about things in a different way. But the kids out there who are in school, they will tell you how it is.
My thing is, how do we speed that process up where we become more open-minded? Because obviously age will do it. Age and experience will do that. You start looking at the whole picture. You look at this side and that side and think, okay, I'm not just going to go off base what I'm reading. I'm going to have a look behind it. How do we speed that up for more of the young people to kind of take a more objective view of it and not just go maybe on what they see? Because a lot of people are driven by what they see, right? On social media, they see the back end of a dispute that happened 10 minutes ago, and it just feeds into the narrative. So how do we speed this thing up where, as adults now, we're like, you know what? Let me read this paper. This is what they're trying to tell to me, but what really happened? We're more objective about how we approach it. How do we speed that up for the young people?
Yeah, I don't know, to be honest. It's a good question that we need resolution for.
Sorry. I think that could be speeded up by, you know, showing the young youths, the young generation, that you obviously, when you're a policeman, you have to follow rules, and laws. That's the first thing. But I think sometimes the youths, the young generation, they have to see that you're not totally a straight arrow, in the sense of, although you are doing your job, there's a little bit of leeway in there, in the sense of, you know, I'm not sure if you saw it, but over the last few years, you know, Notting Hill Carnival, we all saw those police women and men, police women on duty, dancing and being happy with the crowd.
Right,
that was great. That went viral. You've got to see more things like that, because that shows us that you can do your job, but you can also be human and have
being
some
approachable,
empathy.
isn't it? As well.
Do you know what I mean? So I think those type of things, show them. You know, show them. You can come to a barbershop and have you know, have a big debate with us. You know what I mean? Even though you're not in your uniform, it would hold more weight in your uniform, because you're showing.
If you wear a uniform,
but then there's arguments that say that the uniform's a barrier. You know, when you're approached with someone in uniform, like sometimes people feel differently. Do you know what I mean? Like I feel like I'm under pressure already, and I haven't done nothing. Do you know what I mean? So like, there's a balance to be struck, and I think yes, we could be, you know, all of us as an organization could do things differently, but also, is there a responsibility on the community to treat us as human beings as well? You know what I mean? And understand that behind the badge, we're just human beings. We want to get our hair trimmed. You know, we like to laugh and joke and talk about, you know, different category of topics and things like that. So I don't know. There's an argument for both, really.
Yeah, but you're one. Sorry, Joe. You're one individual, isn't it? Well, he's approachable.
Yeah.
You know, you're from the culture. I think it's the branding of the police.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? So
I hear that.
you've got someone like yourself who we'd say is a good egg, but the branding of the Met, generally speaking, is negative.
I think
So
I
it's
think
changing
one of
that.
the things which you were saying there, Danny, in the question about what you were saying, how can it be sped up? I think one of the biggest things is how many people are in the organisation like yourself that are willing, because not everyone's willing to do what you're doing. These conversations that we're having, are you able and are you having those conversations within the organisation to say that, look guys, this is what I'm doing, this is what we should be doing, this is how we can start to bridge the gap, these are the conversations that we need to have, these are the type of people that we need to have the conversations with to be able to get those inroads, to be able to make the progress that we need to make. Because at the end of the day, it's one of those things, like you've had conversations with us, you can't just turn up somewhere and just have a conversation with people, because it's not going to work. Are there people that are willing, like yourself, to collectively within the organisation have those conversations with the right people to start bridging those gaps? It's also about the community element of it as well, because the community also have to be willing to, if you are going to come into these kind of spaces and have those kind of conversations, if there is any backlash from people in the community, how do the community back you for the work that you're doing and back the organisation in trying to bridge that gap?
Yeah, for me, there's so much great work going on in the community, not just Croydon. Some of the youth engagement teams, the safer neighbourhood teams, great individuals from the commander, superintendent down, and then across Pan London. There's so many, individual departments doing some great work. It never just gets highlighted. It never gets highlighted.
And you know what? Sorry to cut you, Joseph, but I guess my question is, does the community feel that? Because I would agree that there's great work being done, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, we're in the same spaces. We see,
Yeah.
and that's how we've been able to facilitate this conversation. But then I would ask Nick, for instance, do you see the good work being done by the police in the community?
I want to join this conversation.
No, I'm just what yes or no. It can be a yes or no.
I think it's mixed.
You think it's
I
mixed?
think there's targets that need to be met. We've got to support our young.
Can you talk to the mic?
I think there's targets that need to be met in the community. Obviously, the police need to do a job, but I think the balance is disproportionate. I think some young people don't value what the police are doing, but at the same time, they're doing whatever they're doing to survive. So let me quantify this when I'm prepared, please, and I'll come and do it properly, because I can't.
No problem.
Just
No
read it
problem.
off, but I think it's a mixed bag.
It's just, and I just wanted to kind of throw it open. Like, do you see the good work? Because Joseph mentions good work, and I think we see it. But I think for me, what an important thing is do the community see it? Do the man them see it?
What the good work the police are doing?
Yeah.
Or you're doing?
No, the police.
Honestly, I do see the good work that you are doing. Police I haven't really seen the good work the police are doing, but I think it's because I haven't been looking for that. There's been so much drama with the young generation around Croydon that I haven't thought to myself one day, let's see what the police are doing. I have 2 cousins that are in the police force, and I haven't once yet asked them, how are you? How is things for you as a policeman or policewoman? So no, I think it's a bit selfish of me. I haven't looked at that side of things, but it's because there are so much tragic things going on in our community. I think that's not the first or the second thing that I'm going to be looking at.
Des, so before we finish up, I know time's limited.
Yeah.
If you could see positive change in terms of bridging the gap between the police and the community, what does positive change look like to you? What do you want to see come out of these kind of conversations?
As I said, a more closer relationship with police and the community. That's why I gave I gave that example of that policeman that he's been out of the force probably 10 years, but for 10 to 15 years I haven't seen any policeman like him. More policemen like what I explained in earlier on in my when I was explaining. More policemen like that. The ones that really want to get in touch with the community, the ones that are really comfortable, the ones that wear their badge and they're not trying to hide who they are and what they are and what they do for a living. Because when you see a policeman like that, they gain big respect. They gain.
Do you think that if that kind of policing started to occur more, community members would back up that kind of policing as much as they should, though? Because there's some community members that are going to shy away from backing that police officer that's trying to bridge that gap. So do you think that community members would support that more?
Yeah, I do, because at the end of the day, there's certain when you know the streets, there are certain people and places that hold big influence over the area. Do you understand? And barbershops are one of them. Food shops are one of them. Places where the influential people go. You have to get a policeman that's comfortable going them places. Once you do that, and he's not shy, you bridge that gaps. People like that, policemen like that, they bridge gaps.
Sorry, the reason I wanted to jump in as well is because I had a conversation with Darren, right? And Darren mentioned that he would like to see a white officer come in. And I think I was a bit defensive at the time when the comment was made. And afterwards I thought, you know what? It's all valid, isn't it? Everyone's opinion is valid. That's a point of view that is valid. So it might be necessarily, in this case, we've said Joseph comes out as a black officer. But we've heard that maybe there should be a white officer comes out as well. Because it's all well and good, like, us bringing a black officer, and so I don't know what you think about that, whether you feel like that's viable and that would help to bring change, because then it's like, okay, cool. You can relate because you're the same skin color as us. But then do white officers understand? Are they willing to come out to the community? Are they willing to be as open and as transparent and as accountable as you?
I think they would. I definitely think they would. And this is why we need more of this. And we need to kind of bridge that gap for sure. I think there are so many great officers, white and black, who can kind of bridge that gap and understand, and who are doing some of the great work. So we need to do more of this, and kind of send those invites out so we can start that conversation.
I think also for me, it would be good to see like police officers going back into schools, like what happened when we was kids, and to build up trust, to let children know that they're good people, and it's the branding of especially in London, of the Metropolitan Police, because the branding isn't favourable, and what Marlon point that he made at the beginning of our conversation is the accountability side of things. When things go wrong, we need to see people held accountable, and not just swept under the carpet. So that for me would create trust again.
Well, boy, I guess that's been the start of a progressive conversation that we can continue. I think it's been really good to have open dialogue in the barbershop, but I will say that, especially from some of the people that have been here as well, like, this is the first of one. This is the start of a conversation that kind of needs to evolve and continue, as far as I'm concerned, because we don't find any solutions just by having one conversation, right? And it needs to be progressive. So I think it's been really valuable to share your opinions. Joseph, thanks for coming down. Obviously, appreciate everybody who's contributed. But like I said, this should start something where we continue to go on and evolve these conversations going forward. Yeah. Done it. It's a wrap.